Okay, so welcome everyone. Welcome to the WA RSCI Chemaraderie for July. This month's a little bit early because the room was booked up for next week. But welcome everyone. I'm glad you all got to come along. I'd like to start by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land we're meeting on today, the Whadjuk Noongar people, and I acknowledge their elders past, present and emerging. So James is here from Epichem, is the head of production. And so Epichem Australia's leading contract research organisation, specialising in medicinal, synthetic and analytical chemistry. But more importantly, James here is a organic chemist who studied at the UWA, and he's been working at Epichem since 2014. He tells me that he's going to give himself a bit of an introduction, a bit of background about what he's been doing. So let's welcome James.
Thanks. So thanks to Raki for inviting me. It's great to be here today. So I'll be giving a talk, giving a bit of introduction about Epichem for those that don't know, a bit of a refresher for those that do, and talking a little bit about how we collaborate with our clients to help them achieve success. So the synopsis for today, I'll be going through an introduction about who I am and what is Epichem, showing you our facilities, some pictures and stuff, our labs and people, what we do, who are our clients, and how we collaborate with them in an R&D and why we collaborate. One of our key kind of parts of our business is drug discovery, and I kind of want to give a bit of an example of how drug discovery process is evolving to kind of take a more collaborative approach between businesses, so that's business to business, to kind of take advantage of the kind of efficiencies that you get through collaboration. And finally, I want to go through some case studies. As you could probably appreciate, a lot of the work we do, there's a lot of client confidentiality involved. So where I can, I'll be talking about some of the clients and projects that are in the public domain, the biggest one being Drugs for Neglected Diseases Initiative. And the other case studies, I've kind of merged a few different projects with similar themes to kind of come up with a bit of a mock case study just to protect the client confidentiality, while still kind of giving that feel of a real case study. It's a bit of an introduction of me. So I did my undergrad and PhD at UWA, PhD in synthetic chemistry with Associate Professor Scott Stewart, looking at palladium catalysed domino reactions. You'll notice here, PhD was 9 years long. I finished my lab work after about 3.5 years. Started working at Epichem, had 2 kids, and it took, another few years to kind of finish writing up and submit. But it was worth kind of taking that extra time to spend the time with my new kids and being focused, dedicated, working at Epichem. Towards the end of my PhD, I did an internship at Bayer Pharmaceuticals in Germany for the summer, and that was a really good opportunity to kind of get some experience in like a modern big pharma R&D kind of lab, looking at in the drug discovery field, looking at lead optimization. Contrary to kind of stereotypes, the group I was in had a really good sense of humour, despite being German. And it was really good time. Once I got back from Germany and that internship, I started at Epichem not too long after, and I've been working at Epichem since. So I started off as a bench chemist. Although I'm a synthetic chemist by trade, the kind of diversity of the projects within Epichem and the ones I was exposed to is quite wide-ranging. And so I've done custom synthesis of reference materials, medicinal chemistry, and then diversifying into things that are not specifically synthetic chem, around material science, analytical chemistry, and kind of hybrid type projects as well. Moving up to senior chemist, I was the lead of the production team at Epichem, and in 2020 was promoted to the head of production and overseeing a team of synthetic chemists doing not just synthetic chemistry, but other types of projects as well. So I'll go through a little bit more about Epichem. We were founded in 2003, primarily as a synthetic chemistry business to start with. We split off from the Chem Centre, if some of you don't know that. And we have a large team of PhD qualified chemists, state-of-the-art purpose-built labs, and we kind of think of ourselves as a contract research organisation. So a lot of our work is driven by what our clients want, and we like a service provider in that sense. So the kinds of stuff we do: synthetic and medicinal chemistry, pharmaceutical reference materials, custom synth, analytical, technical problem solving, and a lot of what we do is generating IP for our clients for them to then own, and we assign the rights of any IP we generate over off to our clients. That's kind of the service we provide. We're a registered research agency that allows our clients to claim the R&D tax incentive, which makes us much more competitive, particularly in Australia. And we pride ourselves on being innovative problem solvers and working with our clients to help them achieve success. This should be 20 years. We're now 20 years old. We've won we've kind of varied between like 50 and 80% of our services being exported worldwide. And as a result of that, we've won the national and state export awards for many years, so much so that we've entered the Export Hall of Fame. So a lot of our work is exported. I think I've covered a lot of this already, but we are ISO 9001 accredited, so that's our quality system, and we do value the quality of our service, the trust we build with our clients, and helping them achieve success. So for those of you that don't know, we are located in Bentley, just across the road from Curtin Uni, and this is our building in Technology Park. So we have essentially half this building is taken up by Epichem, with one lab at the back of here and another lab over that side as well. So I'd say like almost 2/3 of this building is Epichem. Our labs, we did start off at Murdoch University back in 2003, and in 2016 we outgrew our Murdoch facility and moved into our current location in Technology Park in 2016. Our two labs are named after retired professors from UWA. So we have our first lab, the Professor Rob Stick lab, with 14 fume hoods, and the second one, the Dieter Wedge lab, with 6 fume hoods. And our labs have kind of been designed and set up primarily for synthetic chemistry. There's a lot of fume hoods per the amount of space we have, trying to cram in as many fume hoods as we can for all the synthetic chemistry that we do. What our day-to-day work looks like, planning experiments, making molecules, somewhat similar to a PhD, like synthetic chemistry lab. But we have all the modern analytical equipment to support us as well. So we now have electronic lab books, and I'll go through on the next slide some of the other things. So we have 3 HPLCs, so we're very well supported by the analytical equipment. Got microwave reactor, high pressure reactor, automated flash chromatography. During my PhD, everything was manual hand pump columns, and it's a real luxury and so much more efficient to have those automated systems here at Epichem, and being able to follow your chemistry with HPLC and LCMS and GCMS just makes us so much more efficient, and much nicer place to much more productive with all the modern kind of tools you need in a synthetic chem lab. We don't have NMR on site, but we have Curtin across the road, so we send samples to Curtin for NMR every day. Sometimes we use UWA as well. Got Carl Fisher, IR, UV-Vis, centrifuge, vacuum ovens, freeze dryers, kind of the whole suite. Our people is really, to me, what makes our company. So we're more than just a logo and more than just a building. We are our people. Like I've mentioned, we are about 80% have a PhD, many with more than 10 years synthetic chemistry experience. We are mostly synthetic organic chemists, or at least that was our original training, but we are diversifying to take on more different types of projects. We have a few analytical chemists as well, and that part of the business is growing. I like to think we have good diversity, a good sense of humour, and a great culture. It's a great place to work. So the types of work we do, synthetic chemistry, particularly around the contract synthetic chemistry and the drug discovery part is a major part of our business, with historically 50 to 70% of our business is in that kind of field. We also do custom synth on a bespoke basis. That's anyone that needs a molecule for whatever reason. They come to us and we can make that on a case-by-case basis. We also have a catalogue of pharmaceutical reference materials, and they typically contain impurities and degradants of those pharmaceuticals, so sometimes they're process impurities, and they're used by pharmaceutical companies all around the world. We export to every continent on the globe except for Antarctica, and they are used to identify impurities in the pharmaceutical formulations and APIs. And from time to time, we also make these impurities on a larger scale for tox studies. So a particular pharmaceutical company might have, detected a particular impurity in their specific formulation, and they need to prove that that impurity is safe and it's not going to cause any unknown effects. So we provide them that material for them to do the tox studies on that. Analytical services. We don't do a lot of the routine work with our analytical services. We tend to do things that are maybe too hard, or there aren't routine methods available. So we do more of the problem solving and specialised kind of method development around the analytical services. And that part of the business is growing quite rapidly over the last few years. And the last part is what we sometimes call technical services, or material science falls into that as well, but it's tends to be mixed disciplinary projects, a lot of consultancy, and a broad range of client problems. Basically, if someone has a problem where chemistry can help, they'll come to us and we'll propose a bespoke solution to work with them. And that part of the business is growing as well. So a lot of our work is driven by our client needs, and we take a very collaborative approach to help our clients succeed. And more, there's becoming a bigger variety of projects. So our clients, they range from big to small pharmaceutical and drug development companies. So that can be local startups to multinationals, both asking for custom synthesis products or working with us on drug discovery projects. We work with national and research organisations and universities to provide compounds, chemicals, bespoke solutions as well. Biotech companies, such as those looking at biomaterials and developing kind of innovations and novel technology around biomaterials and medical devices. Quite a few startup companies we work with as well. As you can imagine, smaller companies don't have any of the infrastructure, and so for them to progress, they need to outsource the development to places like Epichem or universities. We also do work with oil and gas, being located in WA. There's a lot of oil and gas here, and we're doing more and more work with the oil and gas companies as we're starting to build relationships with them and realising how much they can benefit from that kind of chemical expertise. I do feel in some of these really big companies that are very engineering focused, sometimes they may neglect the kind of more chemistry side that can actually benefit them. And there's a few examples that I'll talk about where I think they're pushing engineering so fast and forgetting to look a bit more about the specific chemistry that they're doing that's caused them some problems that could have been avoided if more chemists were involved. Similar to the oil and gas, mineral resources companies are big in WA as well. And a little bit surprising to me how much kind of organic chemistry is involved with some of these places. So we do like flotation agents, reference materials for different organic reagents they're using, hydrometallurgy, where they're using extractants to kind of enrich different metals. We provide those and services around that to kind of optimise their process when they're looking at changing the different agents they're using and that kind of thing. And lastly, agricultural companies. So we've looked at projects in like synthesising pheromones and metabolites, and do a bit of work in herbicides, either trying to develop new herbicides or looking at impurities and degradants of those herbicides to support the agricultural industry. So a couple of the kind of clients we can talk about, so these ones that are happy for us to talk about. So the first one is the Drugs with Neglected Diseases Initiative. So this is a 14-year consecutive relationship we've had with them, where we're looking at developing a drug for Chagas disease. I'll talk a little bit more about that particular project in one of the case studies. Another one, which is a local company, PYC Therapeutics. They are an RNA therapeutic company that are looking at combining RNA therapeutics with cell-penetrating peptides to kind of deliver those RNA therapeutics to then accelerate the kind of delivery and achieve outcomes for patients. As part of our collaboration with PYC, we've kind of been really instrumental in their success, and they're quote not ours, but they've said that we've accelerated their commercialisation by 5 years. So that's a really nice success story. Two WA companies working together to kind of accelerate commercialisation and achieve success. Forever and More is another one we worked with during the COVID pandemic. They were looking at hand sanitisers and surface sprays, and we were collaborating with them to try and get kind of proof of their virucidal activity and efficacy, and kind of helping them develop their product, which was in the early stage. So our collaborative approach, so why would we collaborate? What's the importance of collaborating? In a simple sense, it expands project resources beyond typical scope of a single team. So what that means, you get, by collaborating, you get access to different expertise and different viewpoints. I feel like I've got a lot of knowledge in chemistry, organic chemistry, synthetic chemistry, but I have very little knowledge in biology and some of the kind of deeper types of physics. And by collaborating with physicists and biologists, we're able to expand and access that expertise through collaboration. Sometimes collaboration could be as simple as gaining access to specialised equipment and infrastructure. So some of our clients initially started coming to us simply because we had a rotovap and a fume hood or a freeze dryer, and started off, they just wanted us to freeze dry their sample. And building through that, like after doing that kind of work with them for a little while, we're able to kind of give them a bit of a nudge and say, we can also do this and that, have you thought of this? And that kind of has built up a broader collaboration beyond just, you guys have got this equipment we need, can you do it for us? Collaboration can be very cost effective as well. So if you need a chemist for a month and a lab, it's not worth building a whole lab to do that one month of chemistry. And so that can be outsourced to us or different providers to kind of gain that expertise for a short time. It also accelerates development. We've got lots of cases where lots of evidence for that. So I'll talk a bit more about that in case studies. And I think it's by collaborating with others, you also can help detect potential problems early. So a problem, again, I'll talk a bit more about that in case studies. Another one I like to add here is it facilitates new inspiration and alternative applications for ideas. So there are times when a particular company may have a technology A, thinking of using it for outcome A, and only once they get kind of further down that someone may say, oh, that would have a really good application for maybe application B or C. And I've seen a lot of companies kind of pivot towards and change that. And I think by collaborating and having kind of a wider view of different opinions, you're able to kind of get those alternative ideas that can be better than what you first set out to do. I'll go through a little bit about just an introduction to contract drug discovery, because that is one of our biggest parts of the business, and it'll also follow on to the case study with DNDi. So drug discovery is a very multidisciplinary kind of field, and where Epichem fits in, with drug discovery, typically what we start with is you have a particular compound that is active against a particular receptor or something like that. So that'll be your target, and then you want to look at compounds that kind of activate that target to kind of hypothesize to fix a disease state or something like that. And where Epichem comes in is we will do the chemistry around that. So we will synthesize the target molecules, validate that they, validate hit. Yes, it does. That molecule does interact with that receptor in the way that it's supposed to, and then look at developing other molecules around that, testing them, and kind of that feedback of design the molecule, make the molecule, test it, analyse the results, and then come up with the next set of screens. That will hopefully lead to what we call a lead compound, where that seems to tick a lot of the boxes for the molecule becoming druggable. And once you have that lead, you will then get like a proof of concept in, say, an animal model to say it's looking like that lead is going to help in this particular disease state. And then we optimise the chemical structure, so we diversify, we cut out more IP space, we kind of optimise the properties of that molecule to make it as druggable and increase the chance of success as much as possible. So, yeah, cool. So that's a bit of an introduction of the medicinal chemistry drug discovery side. Originally, a lot of drug discovery, like in the 90s, was done in-house at big pharmaceutical companies. So they did the synthetic chemistry, they did the pharmacology, the in vitro assays. But as we've progressed towards the 2000s, we've seen contract research organisations start to play a bigger role. So that's where the pharmaceutical companies are starting to outsource more of those specialised things to contract research organisations. And today, it looks quite different. So you have a lot more involvement of contract research organisations like Epichem, and pharma is doing kind of less, or they're not trying to take it all in-house, and they're seeing the benefits of collaborating from business to business. There are kind of three models that this can work in with pharma. So pharma can kind of outsource and manage the projects themselves, so they can outsource the chemistry, get the chemistry back in, send it off to the different in vitro assays, pharmacology, and kind of do it internally. There are also, manage it internally. There are also these big contract research organisations that have a fuller suite of that, so they have all the chemistry in-house, and basically some companies can outsource everything to the one CRO. And then you have a bit of a hybrid model where the pharma sends the work to the chemistry organisation, and through strategic partnerships, the chemistry organisation, such as Epichem, can then send off for in vitro biology and pharmacology and that kind of thing. So with Epichem, we typically work like A and B. So some of our clients, they just tell us to make particular targets, and we'll kind of do the chemistry, but we have less involvement around the biology and the planning. And there are other projects where DNDi is the biggest example, where they give the chemistry kind of project to us. We design all the targets, we do the chemistry, and then we send off for pharmacology, get the results back, process them, and then use that to design the next set. Cool. So that brings me over to the first case study, Drugs from Neglected Diseases initiative. It's been a 14-year relationship, which has typically employed 5 to 6 chemists, full-time equivalent chemists at Epichem, and we've been developing a drug for Chagas disease. We lead all the chemistry and project and compound management. So we're designing all the targets, we're outsourcing the different tests to our different collaborators, processing that and kind of providing updates back to DNDI and working with them to kind of keep the project tracking towards success. So over the 14 years, we've made over 3,000 compounds and over 500 compounds produced in 2021. So that's 2021, not last year. And yeah, we've established a number of lead series, and yeah, we've also achieved a little bit more, but I can't talk too much about the success due to confidentiality. But it's been a really exciting and good kind of bread and butter for Epichem to have that relationship. So I have a few more case studies, but I just thought I'd put this disclaimer up here. The next few ones are kind of merged a few different opportunities with similar themes to de-identify and protect client confidentiality IP. And just for a little bit of fun, I've used Bing Image Creator to create some mock-up logos for these fictitious companies. So case study 2, we're working with this European biotechnology company, and their problem, or their kind of situation, is they had identified and validated a hit for a particular compound for the treatment of spontaneous combustion. So I don't want to disclose the disease state because it may kind of infer some things around the IP. But particularly with this particular disease state, there are a lot of companies and research organisations around the world looking at this particular series. Very exciting field of study, but some of it is in the public domain around the core structures. And so the particular company we were working with wanted to introduce a bit more diversity around that structure to make sure that there were no IP issues. So they wanted us to change it enough. They'd already done some of the work, but they wanted to change it more, just to be very, very sure that there's no IP overlap and also improve selectivity. Their particular compound was also very poorly aqueously soluble in water, and so they wanted us to also improve that as well. So our goal was to prepare a bunch of novel derivatives, try and make them even more novel, try and introduce as much novelty as we can in a way to try and get that free IP space, and at the same time increase the aqueous solubility to enable it to be deliverable by injection. So we work closely with the client to identify less common sulfonamide bioisosteres with free IP space, and design a suitable synthesis around that to incorporate highly polar solubilizing motifs. This is really interesting, like the bioisostere that we're able to find for sulfonamides. It's surprisingly uncommon in the literature, but kind of easy to make, and it's, we had to develop a little bit of the chemistry around it because they're not so common, but it was a really interesting project and something, I think there's more work that could be done around introducing this bioisostere in different types of molecules to get around IP space. So if anyone's interested, feel free to talk to me and we can kind of, if you're interested in an area to research in synthetic chem, I think that bioisostere would be a nice one to look at. So we were able to achieve that and also incorporate a highly polar, solubilizing phosphate group to make a prodrug of that molecule, which turned it from being almost like brick dust to being very, very water soluble. And recently, that particular client has put patents out on these novel derivatives. So big success that we helped achieve. Case study 3. This is kind of a merging of 3 or 4 different opportunities with very similar themes. So I was actually surprised that this happened like 3 or 4 times before, where there's been a very urgent need for Epichem to help a particular client out and achieve a solution to their kind of urgent problem very quickly. So basically, the company has detected a problematic impurity in one of their process outputs, potentially resulting in the product needing to be reprocessed at massive costs to this organisation. So I got a call one day They basically told me what their problem was and if we could help develop an analytical method to kind of detect this problematic impurity and quantify it. Because they had some analysis to say it's probably there, but they couldn't tell how much of it was there, how much the problem was going to be, and basically if their kind of process output was going to cause them massive problems or not, whether it was okay. They also wanted us to develop a solution to help remove that impurity if it was a problem, or at least to reduce the risk of it being a problem as well, and propose how the problematic impurity had got there, had originated, and then later to prevent it from reoccurring. This was a really urgent project. They wanted us to achieve kind of results in 2 weeks, and within about half an hour of getting off the phone, we kind of came up with a plan, got a quote out, accepted the purchase order, accepted the project, and then started shipping samples off to us to kind of get moving very quickly. And that's something I think Epichem is really good at. We can be very agile and flexible. And yeah, our approach was to work with the client to kind of figure out who's best to do which part of the project. So we needed to do the bulk of it because we had the analytical capability to do so. But we didn't have all the samples to analyse, all the reference materials, so they were able to do some work at their end and send them over here just to kind of maximise the turnaround to get it done as fast as possible. In the end, we were successful in quantifying the problematic impurity using a combination of HPLC and LCMS, and we determined that, yeah, the limit or the level of that impurity was kind of at the threshold of being suitable or not. And in the end, the client, we kind of got the results to them just in time, and they had to reprocess that process output at a huge cost to them. But at least they had the justification to say it was a problem. They definitely did need to do this work. They did need to spend that extra money to do it. Subsequently to that, we were able to work with them to demonstrate a method to remove that impurity on a lab scale, which they then rapidly applied at their facility to then remove that impurity or reduce it below that threshold. And essentially reduce it or stop it from causing a problem and basically allowing them to keep producing what they're producing. Because if they were to stop, it would be massive, massive cost. We were also able to determine the origin of the impurity. In a way, it was quite obvious where it had come from. There's only one place it could have come from. It's basically a molecule has degraded as part of their process or potentially in one of their inputs. And so through kind of just understanding the chemistry of it, we were able to determine where it came from, why it came from there. In some ways, it's a problem that shouldn't have occurred because we could see from the chemistry and how that chemicals are being used, it was inevitable that this issue would have arose. And I think that's where having more involvement from chemists and more collaboration from chemists in some of these processes would have helped them avoid this huge cost to them. And as a consequence of that, they're now collaborating with us and continuing to work with us to look at long-term solutions to avoid this kind of issue happening again, and basically asking us, is this new reagent going to cause problems, and getting us to do some work behind that to just make it as robust as possible. So that was a really fun project. We kind of had to drop everything and kind of get everyone on board to kind of coordinate as quickly as possible, but we were able to achieve results very quickly, and it had a massive impact on that particular company. Case study 4, so this is a local biotech. This is kind of an issue that's come up a few times. So what we found, I'll go through. But basically, a particular client has come to us with a novel biomaterial or a novel product, and they have established proof of concept to treat a particular disease. But their production methodology comes straight out of a university, and it's really like cutting edge technology. But the production methodology hasn't got the kind of robustness around it that's required to kind of progress it through towards commercialisation. So there's no so let's say it's like a 4-step procedure, and they're not characterising it at each step to say, does step 1 do what you've assumed step 1 to do, and step 2 and step 3. And so we've come in and looked at their process, tried to come up with a way to make it more scalable, and also incorporate characterisation methods at each of those stages to make sure, if you're thinking it's going to do, step 1's supposed to do what step 1 does, you need to kind of prove it and check, because you don't want to go through all these stages only to find out something went wrong somewhere and you don't know exactly where or why. So we kind of built that robustness around them for it. So we adapted their procedures to scalable equipment at our facility, and then we developed characterisation methods at each step of that process to show, this is what should happen, is it happening or not, be able to detect differences if it's not working as well. And what we found is we were able to develop a direct analysis method based on HPLC and NMR, and found that their step 1 was only 20% as effective as they'd assumed. So they assumed, because they're mixing these particular chemicals together, must be 100%. We found it was only 20% as effective as you thought it was. And not only that, they had a lot of these problematic byproducts in there, which they assumed basically from their purification methodology that they should all be removed, but they didn't actually measure to see if they were or not. And we found basically their purification methodology did nothing, and all those impurities were still there. And downstream, you're going to have to determine, are those byproducts interfering, or do they have toxicity issues? Because this particular product was looking at going into a person, so there's a lot of extra work you have to do around if you have an impurity in there in one of your products going into a person. So if you can remove it, it's a lot less work for you to have to do. And we were able to propose and trial an alternative reagent, which really simplified the process and eliminated all byproducts, and basically making their process much more cost effective to do at scale. So it went from mixing about 5 things together and having 4 or 5 different byproducts come out at the end or remain in the product, to 1 reagent and 1 not problematic byproduct as well. So that's kind of where collaborating and how Epichem had value through our chemistry expertise. So that's the 4 case studies I wanted to go through, and just a little bit of a summary on how we work. So we offer tailored professional and technical support services to companies to help them achieve success. We listen and respond to clients' needs. We're very agile, adaptable and scalable. I think that's some of the advantages we have over other organisations. We can jump on something very quickly and kind of get solutions. Our projects can last anywhere from 1 hour of work to 14 years of work. So we do like a very wide range of kind of scale, like lengths and sizes of the project. We have designated project managers and lead chemists through the project lifespan, so that gives the continuity. We do very frequent updates, so weekly or bi-weekly updates and reports to clients. And always communicating the success, and at the bottom here, very honest and updates around timeframes. So if we don't know, we communicate that. We'll try and provide estimates where we can, but we do kind of honestly say, look, this is an estimate, there's some uncertainty there or whatever. And again, we're very strict around protecting our client data and IP. So in this talk, you'll see I've not disclosed anything confidential. We're very tight on that because it is a big part and core part of our business. And we like to think we're very friendly and collaborative. And we work under the ISO 9001 quality system. Cool. So that's it for my presentation. Thanks for your time. And yeah, I'd like to open it up to any questions.
Anyone? Thank you very much. It's a brilliant talk. Has anyone got any questions? Yeah.
So with the AI, the development of AI technology, has it started to be implemented?
We haven't done anything with AI directly. We are working with some collaborators around looking at AI to design structures for new molecules. So that's a project we're looking at. So they do the AI, they come up with particular structures, and then they need those structures made, or those chemicals made, to validate, is what the computer said, does it actually work? And we're working in that sense, so we're making molecules. It's early stage discussions, but yeah, we are looking at collaborating in that area.
And that process has been done manually for some time. Still using
Yeah.
computers,
Yeah.
both drug discovery and agricultural chemicals, etc. There's a lot of computer simulation done on looking for similar chemistry or properties in molecules, and then obviously then searching those.
Yeah.
The AI part, I suppose, allows you to select a little bit more criteria. Probably the rep might grow for years. A lot of the chemists, etc., have been utilising computers to speed up the discovery possibilities.
Yeah, exactly. And many of our collaborators kind of help propose targets through that computational chemistry that they do. I should disclose I'm not a medicinal chemist. We do have a lot of medicinal chemists at the organisation, but I'm more pure kind of synthetic and a bit more analytical kind of process chemistry experience as well. But yeah. Yep.
My question is in the interface with intellectual property. You say that you synthesise a whole range of organic molecules. Some of those will be fairly unique. Do you have to give up any patents or any intellectual property, or is it transferred to your client? So you just pay for a service even though you might have discovered something which hadn't been discovered before?
Yeah, so it ranges. So for the majority of our drug discovery projects, we kind of work on the sense that we're making molecules for them. So any of the IP generated through that, or the final compounds, or the later stage intermediates, that's all their intellectual property, and we sign that over, and that's part of our research agreement we have with them. We do have times where a particular company will just ask us to make a particular molecule, and that molecule may or may not be in the public domain, and in that instance we will kind of always work with the client to see, is this something they want IP on? If it's in the public domain, they often don't care. Some of our pharmaceutical reference materials, where it's say a particular API reacting with a flavouring agent, generates a new molecule, that client doesn't want the IP around that particular kind of conjugate molecule that's formed, and so we keep that and we can add it to our catalogue, that's fine. But most of the time, the products we make, we sign over that IP to the client. Yep.
I've got a question. So yeah, I mean, it's fantastic that you have so many people coming to you for work and for contracts. But what's the most common way of them hearing about your company? Is it through word of mouth, or is it through advertising?
Yeah, and we get most of our work comes from word of mouth, and I think it's been a really powerful way. Like we've been able to achieve success basically from doing a good job, and then telling others or moving companies, and then coming back to Epichem. So yeah, the vast majority has actually been word of mouth and referrals. We are looking at, we've recently hired a business development manager, so that's a new thing we've got at Epichem, and we're looking at kind of moving beyond just word of mouth to get business in, and looking at more marketing initiatives, attending more conferences, doing more things like this to kind of get our name out there and letting people know what we can do, because it's surprising how many people don't know about Epichem, even within Australia, or what we can do and how much we can add value. So.
The other question is, have you listed?
on the stock exchange.
Yeah.
So we are a wholly owned subsidiary of the publicly listed company Pharmos. So yeah, they're a parent company. They have two subsidiaries. There's Epichem and there's Pitney. And Pitney is looking at repurposing monopantol, which is a sheep trance anti-parasite compound. They're looking at repurposing that for use in cancer.
So how many staff would you have and how many projects would you do a year?
Our staff is around 15 to 20. It goes up and down a little bit, so we have contracted a little bit over the last year. And the number of projects, I'd say on average maybe 50 a year, and some of those are half a day or a few hours, up to 3 chemists full time per year. So it's very different in the size of the projects, but as a rough guess, maybe 50 a year.
So when you do these, like, if you've got like a lot of rush jobs on, and you've got that size team, do you ever find yourself having to bring in a lot more staff quickly, like through temp agencies, or do you just sort of stick at it and try and keep with your team?
Yeah, it's something that, like when I first came into the role of head of production, I was always worried about getting in too much work that we can't handle, or not getting in enough work, but it somehow seems to kind of balance out. Just when you kind of are getting less work and it feels like, oh, we're going to run out of work, some people contact us, and somehow it's a bit less like ebbs and flows than I would have first thought. We do, the way we kind of balance it, sometimes we do have to hire. Like we try not to hire and remove staff very often. We try and have a very stable team. One of the strategies we use is when we do have like gaps in projects, we do in-house R&D, which is mostly centred around developing new pharmaceutical reference standards. So it doesn't really compete with any of our clients' IP. It's just making new catalogue products essentially, and that helps kind of balance a bit of the workflow. And we also, when we have quieter times, we re-synthesise some of our catalogue products as well to keep them in stock. So that's kind of a strategy we use to help buffer. Yeah.
Has anyone got any more questions? And if not, thanks James again for bringing the talk.
Cool. Thanks.